The unfolding saga of Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus' leadership of the World Health Organization has entered a second act, leaving Andrew Huberman with a sense of unease. With no competitors in sight, Dr. Tedros has once again assumed the position of Director General. Is he truly ready to steer the global health ship for another half-decade? Questions loom about this individual with such immense responsibilities. He appears increasingly worn down, riddled with fatigue and anxiety. What unforeseen challenges is he wrestling with? Andrew Huberman can't help but to harbor concerns about the concealed intentions of the WHO officials. Why does it seem like there's a significant clandestine operation brewing within the corridors of the World Health Organization? His eyes wander back to a memory that still sent shivers down his spine. A visit to a war-ravaged Ukraine. The faces of the innocent children, their lives embroiled in conflict, fueled his pursuit of peace. His position was not without storms, though. The COVID-19 pandemic, a colossal battle that had the world on its knees, as well as criticisms like wildfires. Yet, he stood firm, holding the beacon for global health. Despite being hailed as an icon for Africa, Dr. Tedros, the first African and non-medical doctor to assume this significant position, has invited controversy and scrutiny. His reign isn't solely marked by global health challenges, but it's also marred by personal tragedy, a burden that constantly shadows his professional life. His uncle, a vibrant memory from his childhood, had been ruthlessly taken from him, a casualty in Ethiopia's raging conflict. His mother wept for her lost brother, the youngest of her siblings, taken far too soon by Eritrean soldiers. The Director General's optimism was a beacon of hope in the grim situation. As he hoped for a ceasefire and the violence to finally end, his uncle's killers hadn't stopped at just one. They'd left a wake of destruction, claiming the lives of over 50 people from his village. These were his people, their lives extinguished by the brutal hands of war. Dr. Tedros was no longer a stranger to pain. But this situation was, quote-unquote, difficult and distressing, in his own words. The WHO has not been spared the scars of this era either. Criticisms and accusations pierced at it from all sides. Financial troubles were like a noose choking the life out of the organization. Yet it was an undeniable force for good. Polio was on the verge of extinction. Tuberculosis and measles were kept at bay, all testament to the WHO's commitment to global health. Yet its reputation hung by a thread. Dr. Tedros, through a symbol of stability, wasn't beyond reproach. Some argued that he represented a decline in the World Health Organization's moral compass and their objectivity. The world was growing impatient with his perceived biases, with the deafening silence of the WHO. Separating the leader from the organization seemed a complex task, but it was clear that something needed to change. Was Dr. Tedros truly as transparent as he seemed? Or was there a hidden shadow lurking beneath the public view of his past? Understanding his past was like peeling an onion, right? Like each layer revealing more and more about his journey to the WHO. A journey that began in Ethiopia, a country with a soul as rich and as varied as its stunning landscapes. Never bending its knee to colonial rule, Ethiopia stood proud and free, a beacon of inspiration for African countries. The bustling city of Addis Ababa, housing the African Union's headquarters, was a testament to this legacy. Ethiopia was a land of diversity, home to Oromo, Amhara, Somali, and Tigray, which made up over 75% of its population. Their languages, over 100 in all, painted a vibrant tapestry of cultural richness. Dr. Tedros was born of this land, and his story intricately tied to its past and future. As he looked forward, one question lingered. Who would you trust to steer the ship of global health? A seasoned politician, his past shrouded and perhaps convenient, or a man of empathy, whose journey was marked by trials and tragedies? In the year 1965, a boy named Tedros took his first breath in Asmara, a vibrant city that had been the capital of Eritrea since its independence in 1991. As he grew, the echoes of his childhood laughter filled the Tigray region of Ethiopia, the place that he called home. His bloodline was deeply rooted in the Tigray ethnicity, and he proudly bore this heritage. Naturally, he aligned himself with the Tigray People's Liberation Front, a political group dedicated to upholding and promoting the interests of the Tigray people on the national stage. The TPLF had been the controlling hand in the nation since 1991, when it displaced a regime believed to favor the Amhara ethnicity. Although the Tigray people constitute only about 6% of Ethiopia's total population, they have exerted an oversized influence on the national politics, primarily through the TPLF. One particular incident that stirred international attention was Tedros' appointment of Robert Mugabe, the highly criticized former president of Zimbabwe, as a goodwill ambassador to the World Health Organization in 2017. This decision raised several eyebrows, a way to repay the favor from the past during an election. Even his most enthusiastic supporters were surprised by this. Inside the corridors of WHO, whispers of Tedros' poor judgment and miscalculation traveled fast, leaving a smudge on his otherwise impeccable reputation, a legacy that spanned over 3 decades. Interestingly, Tedros' entry into politics began with association into the TPLF. This group was considered radical leftist and eventually blended into the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front, forming a strong left-leaning coalition government that ruled Ethiopia until recent times. An Ethiopian newspaper even placed Tedros as the 3rd most influential member within TPLF's portfolio. As a member of the TPLF, Tedros climbed the ladder of political success, and he reached the position of health minister in 2005. During his position here, which ended in 2012, he recorded considerable victories against diseases like HIV, measles, and malaria, effectively reducing their incidences. Navigating the choppy waters of Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus' tenure, as Ethiopia's health minister is far from a leisurely stroll down memory lane. A cloud of questionable allegations lingered over the landscape of his administration, casting long and unsettling shadows over the behavior of the Tigray People's Liberation Front. The narrative of systematic discrimination and human rights abuses that had the Amhara ethnic group, suspected members of the opposition party, at its center painted a grim picture, leading to significant cause for concern. Reports emerged that the TPLF had denied Amhara villagers access to basic necessities like food and fertilizer, corroborated by a detailed account of Human Rights Watch from 2010. The denial of emergency medical aid was among the more egregious charges that had been made. The images of the TPLF and, by extension, Tedros' government began to crack out and fracture under the weight of these obligations. A study conducted in 2009 by a team of observers painted an equally distressing image. They had interviewed dozens of individuals across 3 distinct regions in Ethiopia, and their findings suggested a large-scale silencing of political dissidents achieved by cutting people off from the government-provided assistance there, impacting areas as critical as food and healthcare. Human Rights Watch emerged as a vocal critic of Tedros' government, taking issue with the allegations that aid and resources funded by donors were being used to consolidate power. A subsequent population census added fuel to that fire. It indicated a startling decrease of 2 million Amhara people. Adding credence to the accusations, the data showed a significantly lower birth rate in the Amhara region compared to other regions. This disparity aggravated the simmering tension between the Tigray and the Amhara peoples. A comparative analysis of the health indicators in Amhara and the Tigray regions presented a starkly contrasting picture when Tedros resigned as health minister. The differences in access to care, the number of doctors per population, and infant mortality rates between the 2 regions were jarringly distinct. The irony wasn't lost on observers. A man steeped in politics with a questionable record of providing equitable health care was now at the helm of the World Health Organization, an institution committed to ensuring that everybody, everywhere, has access to high-quality medical care. Tedros' tenure as Ethiopia's health minister is a chapter in his career that carries a lot of weight. The experience that he gained during this period made his candidacy for the position of World Health Organization Director General compelling. However, there's a glaring omission on his resume during this time. A glowing account of his efforts to improve Ethiopia's healthcare system and reduce mortality rates from various diseases is blighted by the grim reality of the cholera epidemic that unfolded under his watch. The evidence suggests that Tedros was eager to sweep this public health disaster under the proverbial rug. See, Ethiopia was hit by 3 devastating cholera outbreaks in 2006, 2009, and 2011 during his time in power. In an attempt to downplay these outbreaks, Tedros used the term acute watery diarrhea, or AWD, in place of cholera. AWD, as innocuous as that may sound, is caused by the bacterium Vibrio cholera, or better known as cholera in other parts of the world. It's a brutally efficient disease, a relentless killer that can quickly claim its victims if left untreated. And the true name of this dangerous bacterium, cholera, strikes fear in the heart of those who have faced its ravages. In Ethiopia, a country steeped in history and folklore, people were engaged in a battle unlike any conventional warfare. They were up against AWD, also known as cholera. It's a silent and it is a deadly foe. The government's response to this deadly foe only added to the pervasive sense of fear and dread felt. Their strategy extended beyond just providing medical aid and implementing quarantine measures. It also involved the deliberate attempt to manipulate people's perceptions and cover up the true nature of the issue. Foreign aid organizations, eager to intervene and potentially curb the spread of the disease, found themselves hampered by invisible barriers. Stringent regulations imposed by Ethiopia's ruling elite served to muzzle volunteer groups ready and willing to assist. These regulations not only renamed the disease, making it more manageable than it was, or at least sound more manageable than it was, but also drastically changed the approach to treatment. They also served to hide vital data needed to effectively combat the disease, obscuring the true extent of the AWD's prevalence. These restrictions and the resultant silence only served to deepen the foreboding atmosphere, complicating efforts to contain the disease. Aid organizations were hamstrung, unable to disclose the true nature of the epidemic or the number of people who were afflicted. As a result, the disease was left to roam unchecked, becoming more formidable every day under the guise of generic acronym AWD. Tedros' administration was already grappling with the cholera outbreak's shadow, but the silence and control only amplified its impact. The inability of international organizations to freely identify the disease and reversal of the severity of infection rates compounded the problem, allowing the disease to proliferate. Hidden under the benign pseudonym of AWD, the disease gained strength every passing day. Cholera outbreaks are not a rarity in East Africa. However, it was clear that Tedros was deeply concerned about the global implications of a major outbreak. The Ethiopian government denied the presence of cholera bacteria in samples, contradicting the findings of outside experts. This was particularly problematic in neighboring Somalia, where an official confirmation from Ethiopia was necessary before a vaccine could be distributed. Accusations of Tedros covering up 3 devastating cholera outbreaks in his home country of Ethiopia paint a riveting, albeit unsettling, addition to his narrative. Critics argue that by suppressing the truth, the global health community was hindered in response to the bacterial outbreak, describing it as a desperate attempt to evade international embarrassment. In this saga, words themselves played a significant role. In 2017, a group of American physicians penned a sharply worded letter to Tedros, expressing their indignation with his alleged silence regarding a massive cholera epidemic in Sudan. They accused him of exacerbating the situation in East Africa by his inaction. The physicians warned that history would not be kind when chronicling the cholera epidemic. "You will surely be cast in an unforgiving light," they wrote. In 2016, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, a name that reverberated through the halls of the World Health Organization, was embroiled in an unsavory controversy. A fellow contestant for the WHO Director General position accused him of concealing cholera epidemics, casting a long, dark shadow on his campaign. The accusation came from a prominent global health expert, acting as an informal advisor to Dr. David Nabarro, another candidate vying for the Director General's seat. These allegations were severe, and they posed a significant threat to Tedros' aspiration of leading the world premier health organization. Reacting to the allegations, Tedros expressed disappointment and not a hint of surprise. He claimed that the accusations were part of a last-minute smear campaign led by Dr. Nabarro's team, which he believed to include top-ranking British health officials. In mid-May, health ministers worldwide were due to meet in Geneva, Switzerland to vote on the next Director General of the World Health Organization. The allegations could not have surfaced at a more critical time. When confronted, Dr. Nabarro expressed awareness of the allegations, but he denied any role in their release. His statement came amidst growing international health concerns about a possible cholera outbreak in Ethiopia, a claim that the Ethiopian government denied. Lawrence Augustin, director of the O'Neill Institute for National and Global Health Law at Georgetown University and Dr. Nabarro's advisor, called out Ethiopia's stubborn denial of cholera outbreaks. These denials, he claimed, happened even when international efforts were ongoing to combat the disease. Dr. Tedros was in charge during some of these epidemics. Augustin stated that he had acted on his own initiative without notifying Dr. Nabarro. He was concerned that the WHO's credibility was at risk if it elected a representative from a country known to hide epidemics. In Augustin's words, Dr. Tedros was a compassionate and highly competent public health official. However, he believed that Dr. Tedros had a responsibility to speak truth to power by acknowledging and reporting confirmed cholera outbreaks. Dr. Tedros, once Ethiopia's celebrated health minister, adamantly refused any allegations of cholera cover-ups during his position. When he was asked about the outbreaks in 2006, 2009, and 2011, the Ethiopian government maintained that they were merely acute, watery diarrhea cases in regions where lab testing was challenging. Confidential conversations amongst WHO staff revealed doubts about the Ethiopian authorities downplaying the severity of the epidemics. Vibrio cholerae, the bacteria causing cholera, can easily and rapidly be detected in lab tests. Various news outlets, including The Guardian and The Washington Post, claimed that unidentified Ethiopian officials pressured aid agencies during earlier outbreaks to avoid using the term cholera and hide the actual number of disease victims. Nevertheless, independent experts managed to detect cholera bacteria in stool samples from patients. The swift identification of cholera as the source of severe diarrhea outbreaks in neighboring countries stood in stark contrast to Ethiopia's denials. United Nations officials have suggested that Ethiopia could have received more aid if the truth about the outbreaks had been made public. Tedros' alleged cover-ups thus not only jeopardize his personal reputation, but also raise serious questions about the transparency and integrity of global health governance. The border region between Somalia and Ethiopia is in dire need of medical attention. The devastating cholera outbreak is currently wreaking havoc on the communities, while the threat of the disease spreading further into Ethiopia looms large. Aid workers on the ground have noticed a troubling trend, indicating that cholera might be on the move. Yet they are powerless to distribute the much-needed vaccines without solid proof of its presence. Unfortunately, bureaucratic processes are slowing things down. Due to the lack of laboratory confirmation, the Ethiopian Health Ministry is sticking to its terminology: acute watery diarrhea, as told to VOA News last month. This brings us to the broader issue at hand: the integrity and the honesty of disease reporting. All countries that are members of the World Health Organization are bound by the international health regulations to report disease outbreaks truthfully and accurately. This practice, though ideal in theory, often falls victim to other pressing concerns such as national pride, fear of travel restrictions, decreased tourism, or a potential decline in food exports. This struggle is not without historical context. Back in 2003, China concealed evidence of a deadly respiratory disease outbreak in its southern cities for months. The world eventually came to know this disease as SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome. Countries around the globe, including Canada, were hit hard. In the wake of this hidden catastrophe, regulations were tightened, demanding more accountability and transparency from countries. Interestingly, the current Director General of WHO, Dr. Margaret Chan, is of Chinese origin. However, her connection to China's past discretions is non-existent. During the SARS crisis, she was serving as the health director of Hong Kong, where she successfully navigated the storm of avian flu and SARS. And since then, China's policy has seen a significant shift. Today, the country is praised for its swift declaration of outbreaks and aggressive combat strategies and open cooperation with other health agencies. The critical concern here is the nature of cholera. It's a particularly lethal disease that can take its victim's life in as little as 24 hours. Since its inception in the Ganges River Delta in 1817, cholera has claimed millions of lives worldwide. Its outbreaks fluctuate due to a myriad of factors like flooding, population displacement, immunity of victims, and the presence of a phage virus that attacks Vibrio bacteria. Amidst this turmoil stands a beacon of hope: Dr. Tedros. He's earned high regard for his position as Ethiopia's health minister. His achievements are remarkable. He actually increased the number of medical school graduates tenfold. He trained 40,000 women for the healthcare industries, and he established ambulance fleets. Thanks to his efforts, deaths from preventable diseases like AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, and childbirth complications have dropped significantly in the last decade. Having showcased his diplomacy skills as Ethiopia's foreign minister from 2012 to 2016, Dr. Tedros is now looking forward to joining WHO. But his path is not devoid of obstacles. Accusations and critiques have come his way, suggesting that he supports a dictatorship. Ethiopia's ruling party stands accused by Human Rights Watch and the United States Department of State of forcibly relocating thousands of citizens, causing the deaths of hundreds of protesters and suppressing political opponents and journalists. The race has not been without controversy. Dr. Tedros likened an accusation against him to the reopening of an investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email server, days before the 2016 U.S. election. He accused Dr. Nabarro's supporter of having a typical colonial mindset and being determined to win at any cost, even if it meant discrediting a candidate from a developing country. Despite these complications, the primary concern remains: the cholera outbreak in the border regions of Somalia and Ethiopia. The world watches on, hoping that politics and bureaucracy will not hinder life-saving medical intervention. The time to act is now.